Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk. Hi.
Hello.
Here we are. We're doing things a little normal today, so it might we're doing things normal. We're doing things not normal today.
Although for us being sick. Yes, for us being normal would be different.
Abnormal, yeah. So we don't have a guest, but we're recording on StreamYard, so we're not in the same room. So we'll see how that goes.
I know, it's very bizarre. I was like, and because I'm a big idiot, in case anybody is listening, whoever tries to get a hold of me, I don't have my phone near me all the time when I'm at home. So poor Shannon messaged me in quite a decent amount of time this morning, and I just didn't see it until it was time for me to go to Shannon's, and I picked up my phone so that I could message her and say, on my way.
On my way. I figured at the very least you'd see it when you on my way. Because you never fail to send that on my way text. And if I scroll, that's just the entirety of my text.
Yes.
OMW. OMW.
Yeah, I'm so lazy I don't even write out the words, just OMW. I sent that to, who did I send that to? I think I sent it to Joe once. And he was like, what the fuck is OMW? You know, these crazy kids and their slang, the lingo.
Omicron migrating west.
Yeah, there you go.
It could be a bunch of things, actually, that are far more entertaining than that. But I'm not feeling in my tip-top entertaining point right now.
No.
I'm sure the delicious sound of my sinuses is obvious to everybody. But we don't have any of we just don't have any saved up like we normally do. We normally try and record out a little ahead of time.
Well, and also I will be out of town next weekend. So we can't I think we could have gone one more week, but we couldn't. Yeah, I won't be able to record next weekend.
No, I was like, it's Father's Day and shit, I think.
Oh, it is Father's Day. But I will be in the middle of a surprise weekend for my sister, which I can tell you because
this won't come out till then.
Yeah. And she doesn't listen to our podcast. I mean, how rude, but
I don't know if any of my family listen to my podcast. So there you go.
We know your mother has listened to at least one.
Sure, but that's when I was at the emergency room with her and I just played it on my phone.
Because she said we were sweary.
We were sweary. You guys are really sweary. Okay, mom who swears. This is you now listening to my childhood. My dad hardly cussed, but because he hardly cussed, he was the one I copied when he did cuss, of course, because that's how I ended up at 2 saying these fucking shoes.
I love it.
Because he hated my grandma's little dogs, and he was tripping on them, and then he said these fucking dogs. I was trying to put my shoes on and I was like, these fucking shoes.
Lucy was about that age. That would be thing one. She had a keyboard because of course, Joe always just put our computers together from whatever bits were laying about. So we had a spare keyboard. So he gave it to her to play with. And she was about that old when she sat there pounding on it with her hands going, damn it, damn it, damn it.
Yes.
I looked at Joe and I said, she did not get that from me.
Yeah, I have pictures of him looking really intent on my little tiny laptop at the time. And I was like, see, that's how we knew that you were going to be doing that when you were older, looking all crabby at it. And I was like, that's exactly how I look probably when I'm adminning the mommies board that I'm on.
Oy.
I'm betting that's what I look like much of the time.
So I went to an event with Thing 2 last night, and the dress code was cocktail casual.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is that?
Oh, I know. I've decided that not only did I not know what that meant, but nobody else did either. Because there was everything. There was, most people made some little attempt to dress up at least. So I guess it wasn't formal cocktail dresses, but some people had cocktail dress. Some of the women had cocktail dresses on.
It's because I don't feel like there's actually such a thing as cocktail casual.
No.
Cocktail describes dressing up.
Yep.
It's not business casual. It's how weird. I don't like it. That's what they hear from me with what the fuck does this mean? Why would you put something that doesn't exist on here so everybody can be confused?
It sounds like something you would read on a wedding invitation. Attire is cocktail, semi-casual, formal.
Right? Like, oh, what?
I don't know what that is.
Stupid.
I did go to a wedding earlier, the one I went to on April 1st, that said no jeans, but it was okay to go barefoot.
Is that the one in Florida?
That was the one in Florida. And the bride was, in fact, barefoot the whole time.
But how come no jeans?
I don't know. She just did not want, that was her thing. She did not want people wearing jeans to the wedding.
Gotcha. I didn't care for my wedding. I was like, come as you are. So people just lightly dressed up because we were in the middle of the woods on the reservation. So
Yeah.
I was like, don't dress up and come out here. But we're fucking potlucking this thing. This is not a formal wedding.
I could not tell you what anyone wore to my wedding except for me and the wedding party. Me and Joe and the wedding party. Everybody else, I'm like, I know that my mother and my mother-in-law both wore hats.
No, I don't believe there was a hat at mine.
Joe's mom was a big hat wearer. And I, at some point, mentioned to my mother that Julia would be wearing a hat. She's like, oh my God, I have to have a hat. All right. It's like, I don't think that you do, but I understand if you want a hat, get a hat.
Yeah. I'd wear a hat if I didn't look big, stupid hats. And also, they're always too big for my head.
Well, I have
I have a rather
problem.
small bean.
Whereas I come from a long line of people with giant melons.
A portion of my family has that. My mom has the small head. My dad had the big head. See? So it's split out among my siblings too. Like my middle brother, he had a friend who called him, but when they were little and they weren't really friends, it was because he was the son of my dad's boss. And he called him like Charlie Brown. And he didn't mean it insulting. He was just a kid. Charlie Brown.
I've seen babies, toddlers that have like enormous pumpkin heads, and you can't say that.
No, you really can't. But I will say both of my siblings that have dad's head were both massive babies and stuff. So it all worked out, see? The rest of us were smaller. So it was okay. We wouldn't topple over because couldn't give us a big head. We'd just fall over like kids in a hockey game. Like little dominoes.
I would like to blame my large head for my clumsiness, but I don't think that I can.
No, because I have plenty of clumsiness. So does my daughter. And it's not because of that. Sorry.
No.
Maybe if you were just randomly toppling over because you were top heavy or something, then you could do it.
I'll try to work on that.
No, I got new furniture. I was so excited. I mean, it's crappy American Furniture Warehouse furniture, but it's still new.
Mm-hmm.
So, because our cats are having a piss war, 2 of them, and they pissed in my recliner in the basement where we do our movie nights because we have a projector and stuff down there. And so we went and bought 2 new recliners because the other one didn't get peed in, but it's really broken. But we got this neat table. And it's like a coffee table, kind of. We haven't had a coffee table in ages. In fact, I don't think we ever bought one. Jeff built us one when we first moved out. He did. It was like a glass-topped wooden table. Ooh. And anyway, so it has these 4 little stools that push in under it. It's pretty nice. Cool. So we're going to try to use it for like games and puzzles and stuff.
Cool.
So I'm super excited. I kept walking in there going, look, it's new furniture and touching it. Look at this. When was the last time I had new furniture? I don't know. A decade?
I don't think I've ever had a coffee table. And I don't have one in the living room right now. I've never had a coffee table that somebody else didn't have first. Yeah. I've never had a new one.
I did have the new one because my husband was, good with stuff.
Yes.
I was going to say good with lid. And I was like, see, that'll just get turned dirty. But then I did it myself because I'm all about calling out the elephant in the room anyway. I guess I should go ahead and get started.
Yes. What you got good this week?
Oops, I picked up the wrong one. Okay, so this is I'm doing this one partially as a correction for the Biden murder episode. So I had mentioned this, and the facts from the 2 articles I was looking at got it wrong. So, and it seemed like a few did, which is interesting. So I decided, well, and those of you who listen, I think I seem to recall, I recorded just a small thing to put in at the end of it saying, it was not 4 girls who attacked this person. It was 2 males and 2 females, and just stuck that shit in there for you. You're welcome. So I decided I'd cover it. So this is the Chicago Livestream Torture Incident.
Ugh.
On December 31st, 2016, parents dropped off their 18-year-old son at a Chicago suburb McDonald's to meet a friend from school, Jordan Hill. The boy who was dropped off was considered mentally disabled. He was schizophrenic and had ADD. The 2 boys went to an alternative high school together and were meeting up to hang out for New Year's Eve. Now, they were referring to him as special needs and all this stuff in the things. And I was like, is that qualify for special needs to have schizophrenia and ADD? I don't know. They made it sound worse in the articles is what I'm saying. And I only found what his actual diagnosis was in one article. So I'm going to say, take it with a grain of salt, though it was local news station.
Because when you first talked about it, I thought he was developmentally delayed.
I did as well, because the articles specifically say mentally disabled and special needs. So I'm like, ugh. I feel like knowing that information also kind of changes the rest of the story a bit. But he was considered by the courts as well to be disabled in this attack. It was considered ableism. So Hill had a van with him that would later turn out to be stolen. But the victim, who actually is never named in these stories, so that also makes me think maybe that does mean that they consider it special needs to that extent if they wouldn't name an 18-year-old. He's not underage, and he wasn't at the time of the attack. He was 18.
Oh.
So, but they kept his name. I didn't go searching for it because, again, if it's not in these articles in the local stories and stuff, there's a reason. But yeah, so I was like, okay, so I guess they do consider that. I don't.
All right.
I know. I'm like, all right. So he didn't know that it wasn't Hill's van. He just thought it was Jordan's van. The 2 young men drove around in the van to find pot. On the evening of the 31st and the evening of the 1st, the victim called home and asked if he could sleep over. And they gave him permission.
What year was this?
2016.
And where were they?
Chicago.
Okay.
So they slept in the van those nights. I doubt the parents knew sleep over meant sleep in this van, and especially not a stolen van. But they slept in the back of the van. At some point on the 2nd or 3rd, when the victim hadn't returned home, his parents started contacting Hill on Facebook to ask where he was because they weren't reaching him on his phone. And for whatever reason, this really pissed off Jordan Hill. And he beat the victim in the back of the van, took his phone, and removed the SIM card so that they really couldn't find him.
Wow.
On January 3rd, with the victim's parents still trying to find out where he was, and I believe at that point they had already reported him missing, Hill took him to an apartment on the west side of Chicago belonging to sisters, 24-year-old Tanisha Covington and 18-year-old Brittany Covington. Another young man, Tesfaye Cooper, who was also 18, was at the apartment, and he helped Hill subdue the victim. And I believe Hill was also 8. I don't think I mentioned it. He was also 18. So everybody was 18 except for Tanisha, the older sister, who was 24. Reports say that a play fight escalated. That's all they would say, a play fight. Because they were getting along fine up until the parents started contacting him on Facebook. What a weird thing to get mad about. But anyway, reports say a play fight escalated into what would be a rough 4 or 5 hours for the victim. There's no exact start time, so they don't know precisely how long it was, but it was hours, according to the neighbors below. 28 minutes of this was live streamed on Facebook by Brittany. And she was so brilliant that she, at the very least, turned the camera on herself multiple times. And I'm pretty sure that she got the others on there as well, because there was no question. There was no question here. So I think they're all on it. The thing is, the video's been removed and there's just snippets of it available places. And I did watch some of those snippets. The 4 attackers, all of whom were black, and this does come into play, and that is why it became such a big deal, tied up the victim, who was white, with belts visible around his wrists and his throat in the video. For a portion of the video, the victim is in a corner near some windows. While there, his head is shoved by a sneakered foot, his clothing is cut, his arm is stabbed, and his hair is cut off with a knife until part of his scalp is bleeding.
Oh my God. In
another part of the video, his head is forced into the toilet and he's made to drink from it. They also make him kiss the floor. They drop cigarette ashes on him. They beat him, and he's gagged with duct tape. In another part I watched, he's picked up by the belt around his throat so that he's being suffocated a bit. The females slap and hit him while also verbally abusing him. Most of the physical stuff was from the two guys. Throughout the video, the attackers say, "Fuck Trump, fuck white people," and force the victim to say similar, along with "I love black people." And I'm like, well, clearly he didn't have a problem with anybody because he was hanging out. He thought Jordan was his friend. They are also heard threatening to kill him repeatedly. At one point, one of the males walks over with a knife and says, "Should I shank his ass?" And the victim, clearly frightened, yells, "No," through his gag. On the recording, at least one of them is also heard to say, "I don't give a fuck if he's schizophrenic." And that would be damning for them later because, again, that came back to the ableism.
Right. They knew he was disabled.
They knew. And they did this anyway, yeah. At some point, the parents were contacted and a $300 ransom was demanded. $300.
Jesus.
They had already reported their son missing. Like I said, I would assume, possibly incorrectly, that since they were contacting Jordan Hill through the Facebook, that they gave his name and stuff to the police, but he wasn't at his house. He was at somebody else's house.
Right.
And I don't even know if he lived in a house at that point because he'd stolen a van and they were staying in that. So there was no information on that. The neighbors downstairs got tired of all the noise from above them, which included stomping, laughing, and yelling. So they yelled for the noise to stop. And later at 5 p.m., so they're kind of the reason we have any time frame at all.
Mm-hmm.
At 5 p.m., with the noise having continued, they complained again. So they came and they pounded on the door and were like, "Shut up in there." In response, I was like, it's daytime. Like, I know it's annoying. I've lived in plenty of apartments, but normally you really can't say anything unless it's late, right? Or early.
Yeah.
But it's a really good thing they did. In response, Hill ran out the front door saying he was coming back with a gun. Like, he pushed his way through them and ran out of the building saying he was going to get a gun. The neighbors ran back down to their apartment, pursued by the other three attackers. And they got the door shut, but Cooper actually kicked it in. And the neighbors had to escape out their back door, and then they called 911. So apparently there were a lot of things. It sounded like they said they'd called the cops before, but they hadn't. They called 911, though, when they got chased in their apartment.
Yeah, when you ask someone to keep it down and their response is to follow you to your apartment and kick your door in.
And so one of them say they're coming back with a gun, then you're like, okay, I think I might believe you. With everyone gone, they just left him up there. The victim was able to escape out onto the street where he wandered in a confused state. A couple cops saw him and noticed he was bloodied and disheveled. Plus, he wasn't dressed appropriately for the weather on that cold January day. It's Chicago.
And it was
some of the reports
windy.
some of the reports said he was just in like shorts then. And I'm like, but why? Would his parents have dropped him off in shorts? There's so much information I don't have here. I'm like, why would his parents have dropped him off like December 31st? What doing cold do?
Well,
he was going to be inside, I guess. I don't know.
I was thinking if he thought he was spending the night, he might have thrown in a pair of shorts to sleep in.
Yeah, and that's what I thought too. But then it said he called and asked to stay the night. Like it wasn't pre-planned, so I just don't know.
Well, they were cutting his clothes. Maybe they cut the pant legs
and
off.
That was the thing. I did see them cut his hoodie, like slice up his hoodie. And so he might have just been wearing a t-shirt by the time he went outside because it was all sliced up. They got his name and when they pulled him up, they discovered he'd been reported missing, of course, right? And he was just really out of it then. So that's why it came down to them getting his name and looking him up to see what the hell was going on. And he just really couldn't talk to them. He was upset. And they contacted his parents and took him to the hospital where he was found to have lacerations and bruises on his arm, face, head, chest, and back, plus the full stab wound in his arm.
Damn.
But of course, it could have been a lot worse. They clearly weren't actually trying to kill him. Although who knows what it would have escalated to. All four were arrested and charged with a hate crime. Now, when they got there, they were responding to the 911 call. This is totally separate. These cops with this kid have no idea about this thing happening. So it's not associated yet. It ended up getting associated later. But they were there responding to them breaking and entering.
Right.
And it's considered, I forget now, I heard an explanation of this finally from a cop. And then I was like, oh, but it's considered burglary. Even though they weren't, burglary and robbery are two different things. It's considered burglary to break into somebody's house, even though their intent wasn't to like steal something. But now I don't remember the technicalities to tell you guys.
I think I could easily be wrong. I think burglary is if you're home and it's robbery if you're not home.
It might be something like that. That sounds familiar. They were charged with hate crime, aggravated kidnapping, aggravated unlawful restraint, and aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. Hill was charged for the stolen van, and there were additional charges for breaking into the neighbor's house.
Well, yeah.
It makes sense. The superintendent said it was viewed as a hate crime from the beginning, with racism and ableism playing a large part in the attack. I mean, they were saying it all on the video.
Yeah.
So there was no going around that. And he did not feel it was politically motivated, despite the fuck Trump parts. He just thought that they were thinking up things to stay. He called it stupidity. He said it was just stupidity.
Well, yeah.
They did investigate to see if it was politically driven, but they didn't find anything. And that's the thing. When I covered it in that previous story, I was like, had he said he supported Trump or something like that? Well, there's nothing like that in any of the stories saying that even politics came up. So I was like, well, what was the play fight about? I don't know, because that information is not available. It's not going to be, because this just isn't a big enough story, right? For them to go that much in detail like they do serial killers, for example. Which, speaking of which, there's supposedly a serial killer operating around Portland, Oregon right now, but then police are saying there's not. But then I've seen a list of some of the victims. And anyway, it's interesting. So the people and the press have decided it's a serial killer, but police are saying it's not. And I know that at least one of the victims has been found, and it's completely separate, but I think a few had been found. So I don't know, but it's interesting. And I was like, I'm going to have to watch that for a while. Okay. So again, not politically motivated. That's just some shit they were saying because they could on the video, because they were all hyped up. They've been doing this for however long when they live streamed it. That's the thing too. I wish I knew when they live streamed it, like at the beginning, at the end, in the middle.
Yeah.
Because the stuff they did just in that time on the video was pretty intense. And so what did all these hours consist of?
Well, yeah. And you would think that it wouldn't be that intense the whole time, that they would work themselves up.
Yeah, into a frenzy, kind of like feeding off of each other and feeding off, say it, because the way Facebook Live works, people are commenting and it's popping up. And so if she was actually paying attention to people doing the commenting.
When you saw the clip, were you able to see any of the comments?
No, it's just, it was pure video of what the stuff that was happening, and then her putting it on her face. Obama, who was still in office at the time, because, the transitions there a few weeks later, stated that the act was despicable. And he did say that it was probably reflecting separations of the time and issues that were existing, but that it was discussing what had happened. In the end, they all pled guilty to various charges. Probably, again, because that video and the lawyers were like, listen, you're right there on the video saying and doing these things. Brittany pled guilty to committing a hate crime, intimidation, and aggravated battery, and made a plea deal which got her 4 years of probation plus 200 hours of community service. And I'm not sure, again, why hers was so much less, except they had different judges. And so it might have just purely come down to that judge. I've learned a lot about how much the personal feelings of a judge come into things lately. And because she's not younger than the others, but at the same time, she was the one recording. So I imagine she couldn't have been doing as much of the abuse as the others.
Maybe.
Yeah. So I just don't know.
Did the others have records?
Not that they mentioned, but again, that could just be the shitty reporting that went into this.
True. So, I'm just thinking maybe if the other three had priors and she didn't, there's no way to know.
Tanisha, so that was the 24-year-old, pled guilty to committing a hate crime, intimidation, aggravated battery, and got 3 years in prison.
Wow.
Hill pled guilty to aggravated kidnapping and committing a hate crime, for which he got 8 years. Cooper pled guilty to committing a hate crime and aggravated kidnapping and got 7 years in prison. So, and again, I look at this, right? And the abuse that I saw in the videos was coming from the males in the small parts that I saw. So I'm wondering if it's just they got more time. Here's my question. Did they get more time because they did more of the actual physical assaulting? They were the ones that used a knife, right? Tanisha did not. So that's probably a large part of it. But does it come down to, I was like, did they get more because they were Black men in a courtroom versus women? Like, I don't know.
Well,
but it did seem like they did more of the physical stuff.
If one of them might have gotten more because he brought him there in the first place.
Well, he only got 1 more year. He only got 1 year more than Test Fake Cooper. But Cooper's also the one that kicked in the door. down to the name, so it's like,
Okay.
I think it mostly comes down to the judges, Problematically, alt-right groups and individuals jumped on this, of course, right? They're like, look, Black violence. And they attributed the attack to Black Lives Matter. Yeah.
What?
They pulled it out of their ass, leading the hashtag BLM kidnapping to trend on Twitter. It was massively trending. So I wanted to be clear to close this out. BLM was never named. It's not brought up on the videos ever, or on the video ever. They did not attribute this attack to BLM. They were not associated with BLM. This was not a BLM attack. So you don't get to just attribute anything anybody does because they're Black to being a Black Lives Matter.
No, that's
thing.
ridiculous.
So, but of course, racism. So I did want to make it very clear that they didn't have an affiliation. They never cited them. And the Chicago branch of the BLM openly stated they were not involved, and they absolutely did not support the actions of the attackers. And, of course they didn't.
Well, yeah.
But yes, to be clear. Sources, Wikipedia, NPR, BBC, something called DNA Info, even though it had nothing to do with DNA. CNN, CBS News, and then Al Jazeera video on YouTube is how I was able to watch some of the videos. Some of the little snippets that people had out there still. Because, once you post it on the internet, it's not completely gone ever.
I would be interested in knowing who was watching and what their comments were. Like,
right.
I would think people would be like, "What, dude, stop. What are you doing?"
I mean, it depends on their friends, right?
Yep.
But did you not have any family members who were like, what is going on? Yeah. So because it was taken down, can't really view those comments. There might be somewhere deep in the webs where somebody was able to save that. Yeah.
And it could be that it could very well be that nobody watched.
That could be too. I mean, it didn't say there were people cheering them on.
Right.
There could have been, there might not have. Yeah. This did make a big splash in Chicago, and then it made a huge splash with the alt-righters, but we're not going to get any good information from these alt-right folks who instantly went, and then even after it was shown, they were like, no, there's nothing on the video about BLM or any of that. Of course they went, well, but it's because they were persuaded and influenced by Black Lives Matter and all this. So there was a ton of stuff out there, just gross, gross things. It was picked up on InfoWars and stuff like that. So, but anyway, I just wanted to cover it since I got something wrong, and I admit when I'm wrong.
How very
unlike many people. I know.
Oh, hey, just a quick before I start on my piece. I know this will be old news by the time this airs, but just today, the Unabomber died.
Yeah, actually, I saw that he died. I thought it was yesterday because I saw somebody post about it yesterday.
I think it was yesterday.
So I was like, shit, I think I'm going to cover him in 2 episodes from now. Because I actually don't know a ton about him. I know it's another one of those things where you absorb it by osmosis. Like BTK, I'd never actually researched. It was just, I heard about things in passing. And I was like, I honestly have never sat down and read the full story of the Unabomber.
I haven't either.
Yeah, so I want to cover that.
Bibs and bobs, bits here and there that we all think we know. Well, everybody knows. No, not everybody.
Right. And then you realize, if somebody were to say, tell me about the Unabomber, you'd go, well, he sent letters. He lived in a cabin in the middle of the woods. He wore a red hoodie or some shit. He sent some bombs, I think. But honestly, that's as far as I can really go, right? So,
well, this is actually a really good segue because I think most of our listeners will have heard about the legendary D.B. Cooper. But as a refresher, because I had to look it up, because I was like, I don't want to just say D.B. Cooper jumped out of a plane with a bunch of money, because I didn't understand how it all happened. So just as a refresher, in 1971, he actually, they don't know, to this day, they don't know his identity, but he had bought his ticket under the name D. Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reporters made a mistake, and that's how he got called D.B. Cooper. Anyhow, He hijacked a flight between Portland and Seattle, and he told the flight attendants he had a bomb. So he demands $200,000 and 4 parachutes. The flight lands, he gets the money, he gets the parachutes, and he releases all of the hostages, everybody on the plane except the flight crew. He has them refuel the plane and head for Mexico. But 30 minutes after taking off, he opened a door in the back of the plane and parachuted into the night, never to be heard from again. And of course, this has spawned many legends. What happened to him? Did he die? Did he get away with it? And actually, it did lead to changes. You connect the door that he opened, and I'm gesturing wildly, the opening door. You can no longer open that door from the inside the way that he did.
That's interesting because I could swear I saw an article in passing come up, and it had an image of 2 people in the front of the airplane seats, and somebody had opened a door on one of those.
They may be able to open a door, but not the specific door that he opened the way that he did.
Okay. Got you.
So I told you that so I could tell you this. I want to say thing 1 brought this to my attention because we were chatting and I was like, yeah, because I already had another piece. I had next week's because we do 2 at a time. I said, but I don't know what other one I'm going to do. And she goes, have you heard of DB Tuber? And I said, I have not. And when I told thing 2, she got very excited because she thought it was going to be about potatoes. I was like, no, there are no potatoes involved in this story. So if that was your first thought, I'm very sorry. So, and this is weird for me because I'm trying to read it off my computer screen instead of off my paper. So I don't have to flip pages. Anthony J. Curcio was born in September of 1980 in Monroe, Washington. Now, Monroe back then was population around 16,000. I think it's only about 20,000 now. So not a big city. He was one of those golden students. He was really popular. He was very well liked. He was captain of the football team and the basketball team. So, he broke local football records. You know how the story goes because we've all seen 1980s John Hughes movies. We know the golden boy. So after graduation, he followed in his father's footsteps and went to the University of Idaho. And he couldn't wait to play football at a college level. But at a practice, he tore his ACL, his anterior cruciate ligament. Sorry if I bungled the pronunciation, which is this.
How dare you not know Latin?
I know. It connects the thigh bone to the shin bone. It's crucial to stabilizing your knee. So that was injured apparently to the point where he could no longer play. And because of the injury, he was introduced to Vicodin, which he quickly became addicted to. And at one point, he wasn't just addicted. He was doing everything he could to get more Vicodin. He kicked a solid oak table over and over again to injure his foot enough to get more pain pills. His friends and family convinced him to go to rehab, which he did. And after a 21-day residential treatment program, he was released and started his first business. It was called Tony's Gaming. And he bought and sold casino tables and related items. So he expanded with a commercial space and it quickly became popular. Again, very likable man. He's got a lot of social skills, so no surprise that it would become popular. But within just a few months, the space was raided and everything inside was confiscated since he didn't have the necessary business permits and gambling permits, because there's business and then there's gambling. And if you're going to have gambling, it's twice as much red tape. That's just how that works.
Yeah. We found out with Pikes Peak Writers that to do a raffle?
Oh, to do a raffle. Oh my God.
Somebody had to pay to go through some kind of training. And then we had to pay for some sort of license to do it. It was insane.
Yes. And you have to be able to be audited to prove that the money went to this. Raffles are tricky.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So anyway, Curcio relapsed and started printing bogus prescriptions on his computer. He learned that a local real estate developer who had a financial interest in a local casino was behind the raid where he lost all his equipment. So this I have a hard time with. He tried to get legal representation to sue this man, but he claims that no local attorneys would work for him because they'd all been warned off by the real estate developer. Now, it's not a big town, but I find it hard to believe that not a single lawyer would represent him.
Yeah.
Because of this real estate dude, but maybe he was a bigger deal than I thought. So
I've seen action movies about this.
Right?
With The Rock and, people like that.
Yes. So Curcio and some of his associates broke into the man's businesses. They stole computers and equipment and files. It didn't say that he ever did anything with it, but he stole it. Maybe he just destroyed it. So meanwhile, he graduated from college, married his high school sweetheart, and had 2 daughters. Go team, American dream. And that was kind of the point to this, there were 2 very different sides of his life. He was this popular, well-liked, outgoing family man, married the high school sweetheart. And on the other hand, he had become addicted to cocaine and benzodiazepines, which when it's home with its feet up is called Xanax. That's one of them. There are others.
Or when it's on the street with its feet up, it's just benzos and lots of other things, actually.
Yes. So, and he was supporting his habit through stealing, scamming, and loan sharking. So as his addiction spending reached around $15,000 a month, he became in a sports memorabilia counterfeiting ring.
Huh.
And I'm like, I don't know. That's so far out of my experience. I don't follow sports and I don't give 2 shits about sports memorabilia. So I'm like, how does someone drug-addled wake up and go, hey, I'm going to start faking, I don't know what it was, but I'm going to start faking sports memorabilia. That's where the real money is. Who knows? Also, over this time, he did 4 more stints in rehab. He always relapsed when he got out. On the law-abiding side, he did own a real estate investment company in Seattle, which was doing well until the economy tanked in 2008. And then he was facing foreclosure on several properties, including the home he lived in with his family and having his vehicles all repoed. So that is when he came up with the brilliant idea of robbing a Brinks armored car. So actually, when I get into this, I got to applaud this guy. I thought this was very clever. And then I learned he may have gotten the idea from a movie, which just happens to be a movie I didn't ever see. So maybe he wasn't that smart. So despite the fact that he was addictively addicted to a lot of different drugs, he wasn't stupid. So he spent months tracking Brinks deliveries to the Bank of America branch in Monroe. He had diagrammed the interior of the bank and along with where all the cameras were placed on the outside of the bank and the range of the cameras. He also he did studies to figure out when the most money was going into and coming out of the bank. So it's like, were the Brinks people delivering money? Were the Brinks people picking up money? When was the most money being used? He also studied police protocols in responding to bank robberies. So that led him to the realization that he needed to make this happen. He needed a really good getaway plan. So instead of hitting the road, which he's like, that's the first thing they do, they put up roadblocks. He made plans to escape on a nearby river, which was called Woods Creek, which confuses me because why wasn't it called Woods River? But he spent weeks dredging the river by hand. And he actually made a test run with a jet ski, which it said spectacularly failed, but it didn't say how. I can just imagine. So then he created an elaborate pulley system, which would be capable of pulling him and the cash upstream quickly in a canvas-wrapped inner tube.
All right.
Now, I got to see a picture of this. This was not a little thing you are used to floating in the river with. This was a giant fucking amusement park-sized bright yellow inner tube. So he's got that stashed, ready to go. A few days before the robbery, he placed an ad on Craigslist stating that 15 to 20 workers were needed for a city cleanup project, and it paid $28.50 an hour. So applicants were instructed to show up in jeans, a blue long sleeve shirt, work shoes, and a yellow safety vest. They needed to bring safety goggles and a painter's mask and be at the Bank of America parking lot at 11 a.m. So as the men were showing up in the parking lot, Curcio was dressed identically, and he was doing grounds work around the bank. He actually had it wasn't real, one of those sprayers like insecticide or pesticide sprayers. A Brinks guard was pushing a dolly full of money. Well, it was actually what happened was, and again, I'm sorry you can't all see my wild gestures. The Brinks guard was pushing a dolly that had coins on it, and he was carrying bags of money. So Curcio pepper sprayed him. And when the guard reached for his eyes, Curcio grabbed 2 bags of money and headed for the creek. He had over $400,000 at this point. Now, it's possible, once I went back and pieced some of this together, I believe that when the guard first got sprayed, he may have thought he was being sprayed with insecticide or pesticide, which that would freak you the fuck out. And if you haven't ever been pepper sprayed, how would you know the difference? So the guy was treated and released. He was okay. The guy reaches for his eyes. He grabs the money, takes off for the creek. When the police arrive, the parking lot is full of men who match the description of the robber. I love that. Mm-hmm. I love that. I'm like, that was clever. So he reaches the bank and successfully moved himself and the money away from the bank in the big yellow inner tube. He gets across the river to the opposite bank behind some businesses. And this also puts him on the other side of the highway from the bank. He removed his wig, his Velcroed on work outfit, and climbed into his getaway car and drove off. Now, the pepper spray, the safety goggles, and the mask had been dropped on his run to the inner tube. So some was on one side and some was on the other. And I just thought the fact that his clothes were Velcroed, so it could just whoosh, just pull them off, and like a stripper, just pull the pants off and be ready to go. But problem was, remember I told you about all the work he did studying the bank?
Yeah.
He didn't pay attention to who was around when he was studying the bank. There was a homeless man in the Bank of America parking lot who had seen him cruising the bank. He'd seen this same vehicle going around, but never went in. Like it was actually cruising the parking lot and never went in. The man had also seen him pull some stuff out from behind a trash can outside the bank and then put it back. The behavior was, okay, so one of the articles said the behavior was odd enough that the man wrote down the license plate number and turned it in. Yes, he did, but he did this before the robbery ever happened because, and when the police came out and they were like, well, no crime has been committed and you can't tell us anything about the guy. So thank you, but whatever. Also, the guy knew the homeless man who it was a self-described hobo. So apparently that was how he referred to himself. He knew that if a crime had been committed, he was going to be one of the first ones rounded up. So on his side, he was covering his ass. Mm-hmm. He was trying to make sure if the cops did come, they would know, no, it wasn't this guy who did it. It took a couple of days before the police put this together. It was really funny. They make it sound like they just zoomed right onto this. No, they didn't. It took a couple of days before they made the connection, but they had a good license plate number. So they traced it to him and began to surveil him. They had found a discarded wig and the face mask after the robbery. So when they were following Curcio for a few days, he was at a gas station. He was drinking. Oh, this is so gross. I thought he was just drinking like a Gatorade, but it turns out he was dipping, chewing, whatever you call it, dipping and spitting in the bottle. And he threw the bottle away. So the police just picked up the bottle and matched the DNA.
Imagine being the one who had to go through that.
Ugh, no. So he went to Vegas. So one of the first things he did afterwards was he went on a big spree to Vegas and took a lot of his buddies with him. So when they arrested him, when he got back, he had $17,000 in cash on him. And it said, and again, I couldn't get the details. It was so weird. You got so much specific detail on some things and nothing on others. When they arrested him, he bonded out, but then he was returned to custody after a suspected incident of witness tampering. It didn't specify anything. What witness, what he did. One of his associates who helped him out made a deal with law enforcement and returned $220,000. And they've in return for not being prosecuted. So eventually all of the money except what was paid to his accomplices was recovered. So story doesn't quite end yet. He was sentenced to 72 months in federal custody. Whoops, wrong mouse again. He was at this point. So this is what kills me. He was only 28 years old at this point.
Wow.
And I'm like, what could he have done? What might he still do? While at La Tuna in Texas, he became friends with George, and I'm not sure if it's pronounced George Jung or George Young. It's Jung. Have you heard that name?
Yeah, but
I was like, if anybody's going to know who it is. He was a drug smuggler with connections to the Medellin cartel and Pablo Escobar. So Jung, if you saw the movie Blow, Johnny Depp played George.
Okay.
So this was, Curcio's new best friend. Anyway, he encouraged Curcio to write a book about his experiences and put him in contact with the writer/biographer Dane Batty. He did. While in prison, Curcio spent 7 months in solitary confinement while the prison investigated his alleged involvement with an assault on another inmate. At the same time, this just killed me. He wrote and illustrated more than 30 children's books while he was in prison. One of them was called My Daddy's in Jail, and it was for children who have an incarcerated parent. And after he was released, he wrote Heist and High, detailing his life story. Now, I'm going to end with a little quote because it just sums it up nicely, from Wikipedia. He was released April 4th, 2013, and returned to the Seattle area, reuniting with his wife and 2 daughters. He has since been working with youth and giving presentations regarding drug abuse prevention and the importance of making positive choices. He speaks to middle schools, high schools, and universities across the U.S.
Nice.
So he has, I hope, turned his life around and is trying to make a positive impact.
Okay.
It seems that way, but I'm like, he's got plenty of time. He's got plenty of time. He obviously has the drive to accomplish things. So whatever direction he wants to take it in is up to him. So my sources were Wikipedia, the A. Curcio website, historylink.org, and redfez.net.
Redfez.
I can't remember what information I got there. I did see, it was funny, I'm not sure, it might have been that site. Somebody was talking about, they were like picking apart the story. And they said that the Brinks driver, A, should have been armed, and B, should have been expecting to react to pepper spray and should be censored for letting go of the money when he got zapped in the eyes with the pepper spray.
Well, unless they're doing what they do with cops and they spray them in the face with pepper spray so that they know what it's like so they can't be caught by surprise. Unless they're doing that with their workers, then you can't be prepared for pepper spray. And honestly, I imagine being sprayed once with pepper spray, this still is not going to make it so you magically handle pepper spray in the end. It doesn't feel good. And some people are more reactive or sensitive to it others too. So,
and who knows? I don't know how much Brinks drivers get paid.
I don't think that much. I think that we're relying on people who are being paid probably not a ton of money and probably who knows how much training they're getting, right? Like in general, I don't know how skilled these people everybody trusts are.
Right. And the other point would be, remember, there was a parking lot full of people. There was a parking lot full of men dressed identically Was he supposed to pull out his gun and just start randomly shooting all of them? I don't know what they wanted him to do.
Probably, just.
And it did not imply, and this was an armchair quarterback. This was somebody picking apart. It was not the Brinks Corporation. It was not the bank saying this.
Okay, good.
As opposed to Corning, when the guy went missing and they're like, we're not going to pay your death benefits. Sorry, fuck off. So
we're going to decide that even though we see you being handled by somebody on these videos, that you are part of it.
Yep. Sorry.
Yeah. And
no insurance
we're going to make things up that have no rational sense to them. I always love a good heist. I'm trying to remember the name of what I watched last night, and I can't for the life of me because I'm not the one who started it, first of all. So I didn't see it in writing, so it didn't stick in my head. Yeah. But it's the second time I've seen it. I saw it in the theater. It's got the guy that played Kylo Ren, and it's got the Magic Mike dude. And it's this whole great, I know. I was like, I'm not even going to try today.
Okay. Channing Tatum.
Channing Tatum. Yep. And I usually know the name of the Kylo Ren guy, but nope. Because this was the movie in which, this was the first movie I saw him in since that Star Wars and went, oh, he's great with comedy. Like he can do comedy. And anyway, they pull off a heist underneath Speedway. It's Lucky something. And I think it's their name, like their last name, but I can't think of it. And I think it starts with an L.
I think I've heard of it.
Yeah. Well, it's a good movie, but I love a heist movie. I don't know why. I need to rewatch Heat, but it's long. But damn, is it a good movie. The first time I saw it, I went to the movie, and you know how fast flu hits or whatever, like in the course of watching that movie, I was super sick by the time I left. So the next time I watched it, I had to watch it on video just to see the whole movie. But yeah, they pull off this whole it's all these steps, and it's always so complicated. And the more complicated and clever it is, the better it is, right? Mm-hmm. But I think most people like a heist, a good heist story or a good heist movie.
Because a lot of times it relies on cleverness.
Exactly.
As opposed to, like in some of the
instead of shooting a bunch of people.
Yes, like in the Die Hard movies.
Mm-hmm.
In the initial ones, they just fucking shoot everybody. But when you get to like, what was it? Number 3 was the one with Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah.
That one was a little bit smarter. The guy had thought it out. He was planning all this stuff to distract while he was on one side, while he was robbing way over on the other side.
Yeah. Watch this hand.
Yes.
Watch this hand and don't look at the other one while I'm doing this. It's a whole magician's thing.
I was going to say we all like a magic trick. Wait, wasn't there a heist? Weren't there 2 heist movies involving magicians?
Now You See Me.
Yeah. Was that good?
Yeah. I don't remember the sequel very well at all, but the first one's certainly good.
Huh.
Because they're pulling off some crazy shit while they're on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. We watched it with the kids.
But...
Oh, it's good. Yeah. If you haven't seen it, it's worth seeing. Again, I don't remember if the second one was, I think it was still good. I think it still had its cleverness about it, but I wouldn't say it was better than the first or as good as the first, I don't think.
Sequels always have a hard time.
Yep. Unless it's Godfather 2, Aliens.
Well, Aliens, yes.
Is it Godfather 2 or 3 that I always hear is like the best when it's
I've never seen a Godfather movie.
I haven't either, which is funny. I have.
You've seen everything.
I know. But it's another one that I absorb so much from seeing snippets of it all the time and hearing it that you realize at some point you haven't actually seen it, and yet you've seen it, but you haven't seen it. And then those ones I'm always like, well, should I bother watching it? Because I know the whole damn story at this point. And I did start reading it's Mario Puzo, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Book, but I don't believe I finished it. So I need to find that. I had it on my shelf, and I need to finish it.
That says something if you didn't finish it.
Yeah, I just don't know. I think it was around a move or something, and now I'm like, did I pack it? Did I lose it? I don't know. Or did I not like it?
Entirely possible.
All right. Well, we are going to bebop right on out of here now, folks. Don't worry. I'll sound this sick in the next episode because we're recording that next. Wouldn't want you to miss it. So
Stay tuned for the Sinus Olympics.
yay. So thank you for listening to us and your support. And if you ever want to lend a different kind of support, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/MMMayhem and have a lovely week.
And we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back next week with more shenanigans.